Welcome to the maiden voyage of video game reviews, and I may have bitten off more than I can chew here in my attempt to summarize The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in a way that's meaningful to the average gamer. Before we get started, I ask you to consider subscribing to this channel if you like what you hear and see so that you can get notified whenever I come out with the newest content. Now that that's out of the way, it's time to jump into one of the biggest and most ambitious undertakings in video game history. I want to start this review by saying that there is no such thing as a perfect game. No game will be perfect for everyone by definition. Everyone who plays a game plays it for their own reasons, expects different things from it, and experiences it in their own way. At the end of this video, I hope to give you an idea of my 200 plus hours experience with the game, and to give you enough details about it on both the micro and macro level that allow you to decide if it's a title that you might want to pick up. Breath of the Wild begins with minimal introduction, having our hero Link wake up in the Shrine of Resurrection with no memories, no weapons, no gear, and barely any clothes. You pick up your ancient Tech Sheikah Slate, which is the Zelda lore equivalent of a modern-day smartphone. You get a couple of pop-ups outlining basic interaction with the world around you. You scamper out of the shrine seconds later and are witness to one of the most memorable cinematic sweeps you've ever seen. That's it. That's essentially the first of only two things you must do in the game. Get out of the shrine, beat Ganon. His castle is even there in plain sight. This game treats you as if you've actually played a video game in the past. You have the option of making your way through the world, the vast, dense, beautiful world, exploring for weeks or even months, collecting hundreds of ingredients, weapons, shields, monster parts, and outfits, meeting seemingly hundreds of NPCs, embarking in nearly 100 side quests, seeking out and figuring your way through over 100 shrines, and conquering 4 divine beasts, which is this game's substitute for dungeons, essentially elevating yourself to demigod status. Enemies who you ran away from in the early moments of the game now become prey, from whom you harvest parts for potions and upgrades. Or skip all that and try your luck at Ganon. You'll probably get your ass handed to you, but it's there for the taking. And here's where you'll get a split amongst gamers. Some consider this optional, in-depth central story a weakness, but I maintain that it's a strength. Not having a convoluted pretext requiring your full and undivided attention for every minute of gameplay allows the player to fill in the gaps with their imagination, wonder, and awe. This game repays any time you invest in it with interest. You get out of it what you put into it. And because of this story, you can pick it up and play any time. The weapons in Zelda are a second deviation from the norm that has the Zelda faithful split into 2 camps. These suckers break. That's right, every single weapon in the game, save one, will eventually shatter into pieces with enough hacks. This mechanic is a big departure from the average Zelda, where you'd enter a new area, search for a key item or weapon, use that item to defeat a boss and move on. You would then have that item in your inventory for the rest of the game, using it once or twice depending on the situation. Here, everything from tree branches and monster arms to swords, spears, and bows can be weaponized and will turn to dust eventually. While I was originally in the camp that hated this mechanic, very quickly I got used to the idea, and it actually got me to enjoy the game more as it forced me to experiment with different weapons and different combat styles. You could quickly jab an enemy with a spear, allowing you to keep your distance, or you could attack with a massive two-handed heavy sword that deals insane damage but leaves you vulnerable to counterattack as you can't equip a shield at the same time. A traditional one-handed sword and shield is a nice balance between the two. Weapons breaking plays nicely into the intricate fighting mechanic of Breath of the Wild. Whereas in most previous titles, you could find a weapon you loved, hit a button to lock onto an enemy, and hack and slash your way to victory in most situations, the combat in this version of the game makes that strategy much more difficult. Here you have the ability to jump, dodge, parry, and shield block your enemy's attacks, giving you an opportunity to rush in and deal massive damage. Some tougher enemies will seem impossible if you can't get at least a basic grasp of this new fighting style. It also lets you toy around with different strategies for different enemies. If you find yourself dying over and over at a particular point, you have the option of trying your luck with a different weapon, or getting better at parrying, or if all that's too much, just down a potion or status boosting meal you cooked and try again. Either way, that's right. You're gonna have to learn how to cook. Here, the developers have added a new dimension to the game, and at first I thought I was going to hate it. Scattered all over the map are cook pots that allow you to bake, sear, or heat food you've collected on your journey, or you can combine multiple ingredients for dishes or potions. Within the first 30 minutes of playing and discovering this part of the game, I was like, ugh, a complicated, time-wasting new game mechanic that I'm never going to master, and that'll probably end up frustrating me and holding me back more than anything. I was progressively and steadily proven more wrong. There is ample opportunity in the game to pick up simple recipes that'll do the trick, and you'll very quickly learn how to combine certain items to get the desired effect. It's not as complicated as you might think. You can essentially throw a couple of items into a cook pot for a meal that'll temporarily boost your attack, defense, stealth, resistance to heat, cold, and even increase the number of hearts available. One of the ways that the game nudges you in the direction of becoming a more proficient cook is by including learning recipes in a few of almost 100 side quests. Just like most of the main story though, these side quests are completely optional. That's right, they're there for the taking, but you can skip every single one of them if you like. That being said, doing so will cause you to miss big chunks of the game, and you'll miss filling in the backstory for many of the in-game characters. If you do take the time, crawling around the map, you have a bunch of adventures that include, but are not limited to, simple go-fetch missions, riding freakishly big horses, shield surfing in the Arctic, bowling with boulders, discovering shrines, mini-golf with boulders, genius puzzles, life-size labyrinths, and a far-off island that will test your wits by stripping you down to nothing. Searching out side quests, the over 100 shrines in the game, and other collectibles will also give you a chance to experience the amazing graphics in Breath of the Wild. How Nintendo has been able to put a game of such size, depth, and breadth on what is a seemingly tablet running a mobile processor with half a controller stuck on each side is beyond me. As I've mentioned previously, this game kicks you in the eyeballs right off the bat with the cinematic sweep you have to see to believe. But it doesn't stop there. With how this game makes temperature and weather realistic, you'll experience dense, humid jungles, freezing mountaintops. The air will crackle around you as you ascend and enter an active volcano. You'll see beautiful desert ruins and everything in between. What you'll hear from other reviewers, and mostly from Xbox and PlayStation owners, if I'm being honest, is that the game suffers from frame rate issues and that the Switch is underpowered. This is criticism from haters, or from people who were video game developers, or worked at GameStop and nitpick and blow things out of proportion. After spending over 200 hours with this game, there were maybe 2 or 3 spots in the entire massive world where I noticed the Switch chugging along and dropping a few frames. This is usually where there are a lot of textures, moving pieces, and dynamic lighting. The average person playing won't notice a damn thing, so everybody needs to chill. Now, if all that content wasn't enough, Nintendo has kept adding to this game. They released a season pass of downloadable content, or DLC, for $20 US, or around 27 Canadian. One of the reasons I want to pay particular attention to this DLC is because there continues to be a glaring error made by most reviewers. They seem to have amnesia and they forget everything that they got for that price. This extra content was split up into 3 parts. Okay, maybe 2.5. The first was like a useless red Nintendo Switch shirt and an in-game chest that had some useless crap in it, I don't even remember. Okay, but the second and third parts, watch out. The second installment gave you a travel medallion that, once found, allows any spot on the map to become a warp point, which I can't go on enough about how useful this is. We also get this Hero's Path. This is such a cool map feature where you can see and retrace every step you took since the beginning of the game as a line that overlays your map. You can pause, stop, fast forward, and rewind. You can also use this to see parts of the world you haven't yet explored if the completionist in you is looking for those last few Korok seeds. The final and biggest part of the second installment of DLC was the Master Trials. After getting the Master Sword, you now have the opportunity to double its attack power, but this won't come cheap. What you'll be subject to is one of the most difficult sequence of trials in the game. You start off in a room with no weapons, no gear, nothing. You have to make your way through room after room with progressively tougher enemies, only being allowed to pass once each has been slayed. Once it's just you left, a warp point opens, taking you to the next room where you'll do it all over again. Luckily, these trials are split up into 3 progressively longer and more difficult sections. Any weapons, food items, and status effects carry over, as does your health or lack thereof. Once you've had your patience tested to its limit, and your gaming endurance, the level of satisfaction you get from finally saying you completed the Master Trials is nothing short of spectacular. I died in what I thought was the last room more times than I'd like to admit. And the same goes for what actually turned out to be the last room of the trials. But now, every enemy in the game stops just short of running in fear when I unsheath my glowing, blue, fully powered up Master Sword. Finally, you have the ability to start a second save file, but now in hard mode. Enemies are all tougher, more numerous, and those buggers actually regenerate health. No more spamming bombs, people. This mode will make even someone who has mastered normal mode check their ego and become humbled. The third and final portion of this DLC begins by returning to the Shrine of Resurrection where our journey began and obtaining what is arguably the most powerful weapon in the game, the one-hit obliterator. But with great power comes great responsibility. Equipping this weapon automatically brings you down to 1/4 heart, and you will perish with even the slightest bit of damage. Now, in this state, you must seek out and defeat all of the enemies surrounding 4 new shrines. Have them rumble out of the ground, and make it through them. If you can do this successfully, the one-hit obliterator gets put back in its pedestal and is put to rest. You don't use it ever again. Then you unlock Stage 2, a trial that will truly test your knowledge of the geography of Hyrule. You search out the accordion-playing Cass, the Rito, and each of his 4 locations, he has you search out 3 new trials, whose location is only hinted at by a roughly drawn picture on a stone monument. Complete all of these as well, and you have unlocked the 5th Divine Beast, buried deep under the Shrine of Resurrection, it turns out. This final beast will put everything to the test that you've learned in your travels, multiplied by your puzzle-solving skills, and raised to the power of your skills in combat. It culminates with what is possibly the most difficult one-on-one battle to date, but rewards you with one of the coolest pieces of equipment in a Zelda game ever. The Master Cycle Zero. You have to see it to believe it. You have an ancient tech motorcycle fueled by the very Guardian parts that you've collected that's able to move you around at breakneck speeds, jump, pop wheelies, and even has a light for driving at night. Mission accomplished. I can die happy, people. My only bone to pick with this reward is that by the time you finally unlock it, well, there's not too many places left that you can't just warp to, but again, it's another amazing tool for making those damn Korok seeds easier to find. All in all, in conclusion, I don't necessarily want to give Zelda Breath of the Wild a perfect score, because as we've come full circle, I'll restate that there cannot be a perfect game by definition. But for me, I need to give this game a perfect score. It was the perfect game for me. It single-handedly convinced me to buy a Nintendo Switch. It also single-handedly got me back into gaming. I was okay that this was essentially the only game I was interested in playing at the time of the launch. It's the first game I've ever bought multiple copies of, and from new to pro, you will fall in love with this game. It made me go back to other video games and feel like I was playing with a hand tied behind my back because of the relative lack of freedom. I told friends who were late getting their Switch or their copy of the game not to rush, to savor every moment. Because when they finish, they're going to wish that it hadn't ended yet, just like me. And if for some reason you have a Switch and you don't have Breath of the Wild, you need to stop this video right now and go get it. Luckily, we're done here. Thanks for making it to the end. Again, please consider subscribing if you like this review, and leave a comment with your favorite moment in the game. Also, being that this is my first review of a game ever, leave a comment with how you think I can make the next review better. Don't worry, I can take it. Thanks guys, Switchcraft out.